G'day everyone, I'm Smokescreen and welcome back to another video. So this is pretty much going to be a prime example why you practice, because I did not practice for this. I did one lap and then was straight into a race, and that lap was a 139.339, which you see there on the leaderboard. I'm going to be honest, this did not go well, so we're going to have a look at this race to start with. We got off the start nicely, and we're going to see if we can get down into it's technically turn 2, the first braking zone of this track here, Dragon Trail. We were in daily race B in Group 3, and I've gone for the Toyota Supra. So let's see what happens into turn 1 here. Do we get through here cleanly, on the brakes nicely, hit that apex, almost look around the outside of the other Supra, coming through turn 3, not quite on though, just has the inside, and I have to let him in ahead as we got the fast kink coming up. He almost bins it off the track, but keeps it on there, and we get through there nicely. Coming up into turn 6, get through there nicely. So the start of this race wasn't too bad, but we'll continue on into the race and see how we go. Coming into the turn 12, the very complex turn 12, got a yellow flag on the exit. Honda is turned around, we managed to make up one position there. Coming into the chicane of death, as it is known. We'll see if we can get through here okay. Through the final death part, graze the wall on the exit, but it's not to worry, we get through there finally, if that is a word, because, or averagely. Coming into turn 2 of lap 2, let's see if we can get through the first chicane without any incidents there. I've got a car right up on my tail. Yep, someone's binned it on the exit, so make up another position into 11th. And we'll see what happens as we go through the fast kick at turn 5. My car is just thrown up awkwardly, and I'm out too far on that curb, and, well, I completely bin it like an absolute idiot. And then trying to get it back onto the power there, the curb, I get tripped up on the curb there, and find myself firmly in last position as I managed to get facing the correct direction again. So that was really awkward. The curb through turn 5 can kind of throw the car up, and that is what happened. I ended up too wide in the braking zone for turn 6. Yellow flag, make up one position into 15th. Then coming through the flying S's, got another yellow flag. These are halfway through the lap, these S's. Got another yellow flag. Where is the guy? There he is. With quite a marginal amount of space as I roar past, but we're up into 14th. Yellow flag at turn 1 of the final lap, goes through that Honda. Lovely. Coming into the chicane of the final lap, yellow flag, which means someone has succumbed to the death process here at turns 15 and 16 at Dragon Trail. It's at McLaren, and we managed to make our way past there, and we are up into 12th, and that is ultimately where I finish. So not good is the short way of saying it, but unfortunately, we're going to see a bit of a downward spiral here, as I did have car number 16, but these races where you finish lower than where you start, generally DR will go down before going up. So eventually, if this keeps happening, what we're going to see is me drop down into a lower level lobby. That's not what I want to be, because right now, ratings wise, we'll see in a second, I'm actually BS already, so yes. We've already fallen down enough to have an absolutely shocking run at the moment. I was on AS, I was at about 33,000, which is 3,000 points more than you need to become A. So it didn't really take much to lose it. We're going to start another race now, so we'll see how we go with this one here. Unfortunately, a car just lost it on the exit of turn 6, and I sort of get caught up with the Porsche and lose for a further 2 positions. Got another position gained from that Honda there. We find ourselves in 13th at the moment. McLaren swerves out of the way on the entry of turn 12, and then this Volkswagen just almost comes across there, and I'm not quite understanding what's happening with that Volkswagen there. It's like he couldn't keep it straight, and it just oversteered off. Got a Mercedes off at the final turn, or technically the second to last turn. This is the final turn, which isn't really a turn at all. If we cast our eyes ahead, I've got this Porsche that I got caught up with on lap 1, just literally swerving from side to side across the track. Of course, not on, so we'll see how we go coming into turn 1. I don't want to get too close to him, and he goes for a bit of a move and just shepherds that Audi off, and I get caught up in their incident there. And if you're eagle-eyed up on the leaderboard, we will see that the Porsche then quits, and I'm down in last place again, so not good. Honda is ghosted at the final turn. I get that position up, another position at turn 6. Coming into the turn 2, I get a late braking manoeuvre on this Ford and actually sweep in between the two quite nicely on the exit of turn 6 again. Got a Peugeot going slow up into 10th, so it's been a fine recovery so far. Coming down the sort of bottom straight, the Mercedes is slow. I'm in the slipstream on the right hand side, and I just brake a little bit late, and you see he goes for the cutback there, which is nice. And then if you cast your eyes up ahead, I know it's going to be difficult with the action going on. I've got that Ford GT out onto the grass, and he bins it onto the inside, so I get another position up into 9th. And then coming down the front straight as well, this Mercedes puts his right indicator on. It kind of goes to point me through, but I didn't quite understand what he was doing. So we'll see if we can go around the outside at turn 1. We're going to brake late on the outside. Don't quite turn in. I just didn't turn in time, as I'm not sure if you saw on the radar, someone going for a dive bomb on the both of us, which is never going to be a good idea, and me being on the far outside, not good. And then trying to recover, I've got this Ford GT behind. I'm almost in last place again, like 2/10 away from last place. Coming through here into the braking zone of turn 6, I get absolutely turned around. And he did apologise in the lobby afterwards, but he kind of said that he went on the inside and I turned in. I really don't think so. It's kind of, he kind of turned, or I reckon he broke a little bit too late is what happened. Anyway, we'll move on. A few positions gained throughout the rest of this race. Someone's having an absolutely shocking time on the exit of the chicane of death there. We find ourselves up into 11th out of 13, and cross the line. Another absolutely dismal result, needless to say. Maybe the Supra isn't the right car, but it felt fine when I could drive it. But I think it seems to be, my opponents seem to be struggling with the driving component of this game, which is quite a large component, needless to say. But we'll come into the next one. Unfortunately, the poor result means my DR has gone down so much, I'm now in a lower level lobby, and which means my qualifying time 1:38.6, which I did improve before the previous race, is now pole position. So yes, while pole position is always a good place to be, it is rather hollow when you find yourself there as a result of being binned off in previous races. Because what happens is, in higher level lobbies, more people can get faster times, so your qualifying time sits lower because you've got faster people you're racing. And then in lower level lobbies, they can't quite get the lap times of the higher lobbies, and then your lap time is suddenly the best. So yes, it looks like I've put it on pole position, but really it's the equivalent of being, 13th in where I should be. But we'll see how this race goes. Nevertheless, no matter how you get onto pole position, you want to always finish the race when you start on pole position. So we'll follow the developments of this race as we go. We're going to have the Peugeot behind, Peugeot VGT, in the form of Gr.3 Toyota Supra, who is going to be the main opponent in this occasion here. So the gap, or really where you want to look for most of this time, is the gap between me and him, 6/10 as it stands so far. So mainly what you want to do is just, because you've got nothing in front of you, you've got no distractions of other cars in front of you, you want to try and pull away from the rest of the pack as we go through the course of this race here. I've got 5 laps here at Dragon Trail to pull out a gap, so we'll see how we go. Now, of course, I've got that clear air, so I don't have the distractions, I don't have any dirty air, which is why it's clear, obviously, and I can just use my qualifying markers as well, because I don't have to take into account slipstream, I don't have to take into account other opponents around me and what they might do, so I can just be, I can do my qualifying, but be careful while doing so. I'm not trying to get a qualifying time, I'm just in a qualifying frame of mind, and especially going through that chicane, because of course if you bin it on the chicane, you're going to drop a lot of positions, and that's more important in a race rather than lap time, in my opinion anyway. But we got through the first lap rather incident free, so hopefully we can repeat that move now. Well, what we'd like to expect to see is throughout the first lap pulling away from that guy in second place a little bit, but I think what is happening is we took a small look behind just a second ago, that there was actually a large gap opening up between second and third place, which I think is going to be the trend of this race. As you see, the gap between myself and the Peugeot behind has remained at about 3/10, or it's remained at about half a second. It's closed down to 3/10 actually. He gets a much better run through turn 6 as well. He's now present on the radar, which means he's about 2/10 behind. So we're going to have to keep an eye on that. I'm now going to have to be in a slightly defensive frame of mind, and I'm going to have to really focus on apexes and acceleration points and not spinning it on the outside of corners. Now, it's at this point here, if you look up on the mini-map in the top right corner of your screen there is quite a visibly large gap between second and third place there, and you see I take a slightly defensive line coming down the hill towards turn 12. I don't want to leave that door open. I don't want that opportunity for the Peugeot to go up the inside now. We're going to have to focus on the chicane of death now, the 4-turn, absolutely nightmarish complex. Turning in slightly late, you see I have to brake halfway through there, and I get a rather poor exit hitting the wall as well. That Peugeot gets a much better exit, and slingshots to the outside of the track. I do have the straight line speed advantage, the Supra quite good in a line, so we're going to be using that to try and keep onto the back of the Peugeot now. So unfortunately this race isn't quite going to the initial plan. It's now gone to plan B, which is don't lose the leader instead of be the leader, which is obviously the more ideal of the two. But we do have slipstream now, and that is good and bad in the sense that on the straights we can gain through that middle sector, through the sweeping chicane, that you're going to start to feel a bit of dirty air. It's not so prominent in Group 3 cars, but it is still present, and you probably will get a little bit more understeer than you'd expect, as without any cars in front of you, without anyone disturbing that airflow over your car. So we're coming into that sector now, and it's going to be interesting to have a look at the gap, I think, between me and this Peugeot up ahead. Now, I think I would admit at this point, he has got the pace advantage on me at the moment. My previous lap was a 140, his was a 139.5. Coming through the sector, we were about 5/10 behind coming in. So we'll see, does the dirty air affect anything as we come through the final part of that S there. We actually get a much better run than him through there, actually about 3/10 behind we are now, instead of the 5/10 we were on the way in. And the braking zone of turn 12, I'm confident on the brakes, and I drive in catch up quite a lot of ground on the entry to turn 12, and but unfortunately the skittish nature of the Supra means I can't quite get onto the power as early as I could in maybe a different car that doesn't oversteer as much. But the Supra is a very oversteering machine. It's not it doesn't like to accelerate on the exit of corners. You have to be pointed pretty straight, and going through the chicane there, actually I binned it on the exit nearly, or kind of copied my previous lap, and I'm now 1.5 seconds behind this Peugeot now. I'm going to have to be really careful coming through the this lap now. Set another 140, so that's not quite. That pace kind of isn't quite up to scratch, really. I'm going to have to try and improve that, but we know I'm confident on the brakes, and the Supra is good in a straight line, as we have demonstrated coming into the first chicane and exiting the first chicane. Actually, we get to 1 second behind, so I'm going to have to really get my head down and focus. I don't want to launch off that curb like I did 2 races ago. Peugeot's actually wide through turn 6 as well, so I'm going to be able to get a little bit more ground up there, and you see 7/10 behind at this point, coming down the hill towards the flying fast S's of the middle sector here at Dragon Trail Seaside. I'm going to have to try and focus on this Peugeot up ahead, but not as much as I will as I focused on my markers around the track here. Through the first half of this lap, I've caught up a second to this guy. I was 1.5 seconds at the start of the lap, and coming down the hill towards turn 12 once again, quite good on the brakes, but not quite as good on the exit, as the Supra really wants to oversteer, especially because the exit of that corner is rather curved. So I seem to have rescued this race. I just have to get a good run through the chicane, and there we go, there it is. Almost touching the wall on the outside. I may have touched it slightly, but we finally get the run that we've yearned for the previous 3 laps. So we are now firmly in the slipstream of this Peugeot again. It has turned back into a attacking race as opposed to a chasing race, is I guess what I would have called that, or a null race, I guess, when your opponent is way ahead of you. We've got the run coming through turn 1. He goes to the left-hand side, which of course is the outside for turn 1, but the inside for turn 2, which is the more important of the two, because it has a braking zone and an opportunity to outbrake an opponent. But he just parks it in the centre of the circuit, and I'm not quite able to get away past coming into turn 5, I just back off slightly because you can fly through turn 5, but there is definitely a lot of room to get it absolutely incorrect, and I do not want the risk of having any accidents here. But we're on to the final lap now, so this is where it counts. It's come down through the middle sector now. We're just braking slightly and turning in. About 175 is the minimum speed on the entry to these S's, and then I'm pretty sure you can get the rest of it flat out if you get it dead right. So I didn't see if we did there, but interesting bit of trivia for you. Coming down towards turn 12, we're going to brake in between the 150 metre board, and there's a stripe of light on the road. That's where you brake for that one. Coming in towards the chicane of death now. This is the most crucial lap, obviously. It's the last opportunity we have to bin it, and hopefully, can we put the pressure on and allow this Peugeot to make a mistake? He takes quite a conservative line through there, a little bit of braking halfway through, and I think that is appropriate for the race because you do not want to make mistakes, especially at this point in the race. It's going far inside. Coming into the final corner, he brakes really early and then accelerates really early, and he's wide on the exit. Supra, I'm getting a nice exit there, and then we're on the outside coming through the final turn. He's pushing me over to the right hand side, and I've just got ahead at this point, and we cross the line, and it is a victory by 0.018 of a second. So obviously having that extra straight line advantage of the Supra proved advantageous in my particular case, as the race came down to the final straight, and the Supra is going to beat most cars in Group 3. Maybe the Ford GT, McLaren will give, and Nissan GTR will give it a run for its money. But that was a victory, a hollow victory that, however, because let's not forget that I had a few absolutely shocking results, and that is why I managed to find myself on pole position for that race. But thanks to the good performance previously, I'm up to a slightly higher level lobby here, and I find myself in 4th position. Better than 13th, but I'm in a worse lobby. Of course, finishing 13th in a higher lobby is better than finishing 1st in a lower lobby, I think, so that's what we'll go with. But we'll see how this race goes. Of course, I'm a little bit further away from the leader, and I've actually got quite a large gap between me and the Jaguar up in 3rd as well. You can't see the gaps just yet until we start the race, but it is quite a large gap, a visibly large gap, and it does appear to be larger between the gap between me and the Jaguar. It does appear to be larger than the gap between the Jaguar and the Honda in 2nd. I could be wrong, but that is what it looks like. Let's see if we can get through turn 1. Confident on the brakes again. Everyone takes it a bit conservative into turn 1, so it is a good opportunity to gain, but you look absolutely ridiculous if you outbrake yourself into the first turn, which is quite easy to do, because you can end up braking too late because you think, oh, I'm going slower than I normally would. Coming through the fast turn 5, Honda is binned onto the outside of the track. I didn't quite see the incident there, but there's no such penalties up ahead to indicate contact, so we're going to go with the claim that maybe the Honda leapt off the curb like I did in the first race, and it just ended up way too wide on the entry to turn 6. So it's now into a 3-horse race. The guy in 4th is about 1.4 seconds behind me. He's kind of dropped off a little bit as we have a look there. Coming into turn 12 as well, braking right on the 150 metre board as I had slipstream. I don't want to outbrake myself or slam into the back of the Jaguar here, and we're going to come into the chicane of death for the first of 5 times here in this particular race. Let's just keep an eye on the 2 cars up ahead and see if they make any mistakes. The leader was wide off the apex. The Jaguar's actually hit the wall going through turn 16, and I just smashed into the back of the Jaguar, and that was actually quite a sportsmanlike piece of driving there. He made a mistake. I went into the back of him, and he actually slowed down and gave me the 2nd position, so he didn't have to do that, really. I didn't feel like that was a necessary thing to do, but it is a nice thing to do, and I'll completely admit, if I crash in the chicane and someone drives into the back of me, I'm probably not going to give the position back 9 times out of 9. So that's kudos to that Jaguar driver there. I do have quite a large amount of respect for that particular piece of driving there, but now it's actually a reverse of the previous race, kind of. I'm now ahead of the Peugeot rather than chasing the Peugeot for most of the race. Or I guess I'm comparing being ahead of the Jaguar to being behind the Peugeot, really. I'm not in front of another Peugeot again. Or it's actually a Porsche. Ah, look at that. I've been blindsided. It's actually a Porsche. So we'll keep an eye on that gap between me and the Porsche behind, Kenton 929, the Japanese driver there. We're 5 tenths ahead at this point, and we're just going to keep an eye on that lead as well, because we're 2.2 seconds behind the leader. Of course, being caught up in that bit of an incident on the exit of the chicane, did lose that bit of ground to the leader, who had a much better run through turn 1. He's actually driving a Supra as well, so it's going to be interesting to see the comparison of pace between the myself and the other Supra here, and then we can kind of see who's the better driver of the two. But we'll come through the chicane now, got a much better run than last time. You've got to turn in really early for that as well, and get really friendly with the walls. Coming through there, we actually fall back another tenth of a second to the leader, 2.3 instead of 2.2 now. But we'll go through a bit of a lap of Dragon Trail now. We'll come through the final corner. We'll just keep an eye on the gaps between myself and the guy in first and the guy in third. As we go through this lap, we'll see maybe I can point out a few things to help you with maybe perfecting or getting a better lap around here. That particular lap that time wasn't too bad, a 1:39.0. But we'll see coming into the first chicane, we'll pick out our braking point. It's going to be halfway between the start of the red and the start of the curb. Into second gear, trail braking it in. I think I do have a slight bit of rear bias here to help get the rear end pointed into the corner, and then being really careful up through turn 3. The car likes to oversteer quite a bit. Turn 5, a massive lift going through there. I don't think it's quite flat out in a Group 3 car, and braking just on the end of the grass on the left hand side. Coming into turn 6, and then straight line acceleration down the hill towards the Flying S's now. On the left hand side, on the barrier, there's an orange bit. Turn in and drop 1 gear right on the orange bit as well. You can have a look at I do look at the speedo at that point. You want to be about 175 k's an hour coming through there, and then you just take a nice smooth racing line. You sacrifice the second part of that chicane to get a nice run through turn 10. Coming into turn 12, braking in between the 150 metre board and the stripe of light on the road there, meeting the apex nicely. Very patient on the power coming out the exit there. You see I point in a straight line towards the exit rather than ride the curve out towards it. Coming through the chicane of death, the first part is flat out. Touch the wall on the outside, which you don't want to do, and then we fly through the chicane at 200 kilometres an hour. Definitely on the brink of death there. And coming through the tunnel into the final turn, we got a good run through the chicanes. We brake a little bit before the 100 metre board, and we slow it right down for a late apex. Could have been probably another car width closer to the inside to get a slightly faster run through that corner there, but not to worry as we accelerate up towards the line. That lap is going to be a 1:39.2, so marginally slower than the previous lap, but I did have this Porsche gaining quite quickly on my tail throughout the course of that lap, and you see him slightly defensive on the entry to the chicane for turn 4 as the Porsche was closing in quite quickly in the slipstream as well. So that Porsche able to keep up with the Supra if it has slipstream. Defensive on the entry to turn 5 as well. I don't want to be offline coming through here, and unfortunately I am. You see how close I was to the edge going into the braking zone of turn 6. I think I did touch one wheel on the gravel on the outside of that curb there. Any further and it would have been a repeat manoeuvre of what you saw in the first race. Coming through the Flying S's now, we have a little bit of breathing room between myself and the Porsche now, about half a second, as opposed to 2 or 3 tenths it was previously, and you see how close I was to making that mistake through the top hairpin there. I do not want to try and replicate that as close as possible. Coming into turn 12, confident on the brakes, 8 tenths ahead on the exit there, but we just aren't able to get this Supra onto 100% throttle as quickly as the Porsche. That Porsche is rear engine, so the back of that car is really stable, so it is able to get onto that power quite quickly. Whereas the Supra here, front engine, rear wheel drive, it's got a short wheelbase and it's got a supercharger, or I think it's a supercharger, to really help those rear wheels spin up on the exit of the corner there. You see a really late apex for the final corner in the Supra here, so you get pretty much a straight line exit up the hill. And you can actually cut the final turn like that, turn 18. You can run one wheel on the curb and one wheel on the inside of the curb there, and you don't get a penalty, but if you hit it in the wrong way, the car sort of gets thrown up into the air. I didn't demonstrate that this time, so pretty much try for yourself essentially. So we're on the final lap now. The leader has streaked out a gap a little bit. You see how close that Porsche is again. It's a repeat of the previous lap, but I get a much better line through turn 5 that time, and I'm much more settled in the braking zone of turn 6. And we're just going to keep an eye on the Porsche in the radar now, essentially, because he's 2 tenths behind. He's going to be really close into the braking zone of turn 10. I think that turn 12. Sorry, that provides the best overtaking opportunity of the lap here. But coming through the S's, I think he's just suffered a little bit from that dirty air. As you see, he's dropped out of the radar there as we sweep through the very, very quick left-hander of turn 11 into turn 12, braking probably slightly too late. Actually managed to trail brake into the apex nicely. Down on the radar, you see the Porsche is able to get that speed on the exit that I'm not quite able to get in this Supra here, and he's right on my tail into the chicane. It wasn't quite close enough to go for a move, and the chicane really is not the ideal place to go for a move. Very close to the wall on the exit of that chicane there, and you see the Porsche gets the superior run through the second part of the chicane, pulls out to go for the move, but just runs out of steam. In the nature of the Porsche, not quite up to the straight line speed task that the Supra can more aptly handle. But on the exit of the final corner there, I do get a much better run out of the corner than the Porsche in that particular instance, and I am going to keep second position by a few tenths of a second, around 3 tenths, just a little over 3 tenths of a second in that particular instance. So that's going to be the end of this one. I hope this kind of helps you understand why we do definitely need to practice. As you can see, I raced and drove a lot better later in the final 2 races compared to the first 2, because I had that small bit of practice, i.e. binning it on every opportunity I could find. I hope we can see that it is much better to have a little bit of practice under your belt so that you can race your opponents a bit better. So I hope you found this one helpful. If you did, do hit the like button and let me know, and do subscribe if you would like to see more videos like this. But that's going to be the end of this one today, and that means that is it from me. So once again, I do thank you very much for watching. See you later.